Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network's YouTube channel. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can find us on Facebook and stay up to date on our Facebook group, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcast can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for podcasts, posts, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now and join the community. Subscribe today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, or wherever you might be on this spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's weekly podcast series, The Weekly Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Meckes. If you're tuning in for the first time, please click subscribe, like, share, comment, follow, whatever that is, to stay tuned to us. And also follow us wherever you may listen to your podcasts. Today, there may be places on this earth where anomalous events seem to take place. Lots of them out there. Today we will dive into a particularly remarkable place known as the Uintah Basin. With over 30 years of experience in scientific and engineering fields, designing and building complex experimental systems, he holds a PhD in physics as well as advanced degrees in engineering. Was an active researcher at the Institute for Advanced Studies at Austin, where he performed experiments in the area of quantum entanglement, quantum optics, vacuum polarization, and neurobiology. Also, he investigated several medical injury cases that occurred at known UFO hotspots. He's published several peer-reviewed journal papers in the areas of radiobiology, advanced medical imaging, and other biophysics topics. Let's welcome to the show today, Dr. Jim Segala. How you doing?
How you doing?
Welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. So for those who are not familiar with the Uintah Basin, it goes by another name sometimes. What is the Uintah Basin?
So Uinta Basin is an area of Utah that is where Skinwalker Ranch is, Blind Frog Ranch is. I'm sure there's people watching this are familiar with those two properties, and there's shows on each, actual shows on each one of them. Yeah. I'm involved right now. I was involved with Skinwalker Ranch, and now involved with Blind Frog Ranch. But the whole area, the Uinta Basin, covers thousands and thousands of acres, and it stretches down from the canyons down through, right down through Skinwalker Ranch. And it's that whole area that sees a lot of paranormal, very strange happenings that people are questioning to see what's going on there. So that's why there's so much activity there.
Yeah. Now, what is the purpose of the study that you perform in the basin, if you can describe the study that you're doing?
So spent some time in that area, and I got to know a lot of people, heard a lot of very strange stories of things, and it just seemed to me that there was a need for somebody to go in there and do a scientific study, really from a scientific point of view, as opposed to more just a fact gathering, anecdotal type of view. So, and that's my background. I spent a lot of time doing science studies, using the scientific methods and things like that. So yeah. It was very intriguing, though. There's just so many stories you hear from people. I said, and at that time, you hear this and say, that's crazy. How can those things possibly happen? But the more you hear the reliability of some of the people that tell you these stories, you start questioning your rationale, and you say, well, maybe there is something going on here. So, this is about 4 years ago. So I hooked up with some American Indians that had the ability to gather people and kind of talk the talk in that area, and said, look, we're going to do a complete study of the Uinta Basin, which again is thousands of acres that span a very large area, and answer the question, is there something really happening in the environment that is causing people to have this paranormal experiences or these just rather bizarre experiences that they've been having for the past 100 years. So that was the whole purpose of what we did there.
And a lot of these stories that we hear today, I would assume they span back maybe not a lot of similar stories that date back hundreds of years.
Yeah, thousands. So if you really read into some of the, well, you really, of course, you can't go back too far because there's not a lot of stuff written. But when you start hearing the stories, it all has a very similar speed. If you go back 200, 300, 400 years, the Aztec time, back when it was just becoming more the human factor. Some of the stories, they would worship the area. They that particular area was very sacred to them, and you have to question now: are we just seeing the same thing? Just the calendar clipped forward a couple hundred years, as they did, but they of course they never seen an airplane or they don't know what Wi-Fi is, but maybe they saw the same things we're seeing now, and they had the same big questions.
Now, and being in the paranormal myself, and in certain studies and stuff like that, you would think that, and you probably look at this yourself, is okay, what type of sacred religious ceremonies or cultural ceremonies have happened in that area over the course of 1,000+ years, 100+ years? Is that type of energy being left there? Is something happening? Is this human caused of the spirit, of that type, or is it linked to? Is there an anomaly that's of the earth?
That's actually very possible. If you think about it, people naturally migrate to places where they feel safe and comfortable and can live their lives. So, and I've got a lot of information about that area where it could be, on one hand, very sinister. It could make you feel very uncomfortable and very, on edge. But most people have that feeling that they just go there, and if they treat the land properly, they feel euphoric. I mean, they feel really good. They go up into the hills, the mountains, and they feel great. They get these, great messages. They just feel great. So maybe people migrated to that area because of that type of feeling. So is there something under the earth or something coming down? Who knows? But people just felt great in that area.
Huh. Yeah, because there's what is it, in like Colorado? There's cave systems with crystals that can mutate or cause this energetic shift.
Yes.
And heal people. And you've got other places in the country like Sedona, Mount Shasta. Now, what is, everything is unique. Every place has a very unique pattern. But what pattern is unique about Uintah Basin?
I think that what's the most interesting thing is the reaction or the interaction of this phenomenon with the people themselves.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of people that say, well, this area has a lot of paranormal activity. This area has a lot of, well, I believe that what the study has shown is that this phenomenon, whatever it is, interacts with the people, because there's a lot of instances, a lot of data we collected that show that when somebody's in the area, particular people that are very astute and very sensitive to these things, there's a lot of activity going on. So you read, we have scientific instruments that read a lot of crazy things and a lot of very unique things that you wouldn't expect. But then when they leave, those seem to die down. So the area is still there. So you think about like Skinwalker Ranch. There's this big thing and there's a big show on Skinwalker Ranch. But the thing is that most of what happens on Skinwalker Ranch happens to the people. It doesn't happen to the ranch. So I think that just happens to be a place where people come and then they interact with this phenomena. So that whole area seems to be very people-centric. Like whoever is causing this phenomenon to happen is more interested in the people, and not just the people, sentient things like livestock, and a lot of dogs react very interestingly to this phenomena. So it seems that this area is very big in how this phenomenon interacts with the people.
Huh. And you mentioned too before, it also depends too of how an individual an individual would react to it based on their own internal respect and the respect that they
Yes,
give
right.
to the property and the atmosphere, and not only that, the people, the locals. Now, so far, where as far as the results of the study that you've performed, what have the results thus far showed? Has it linked to anything that?
So, yeah, one of the interesting, well, there's a lot of interesting things. So, but the biggest story is that you ask the question, so the question gets asked, is there a actual physical thing happening when people experience some paranormal, um, some paranormal activity? I would say, at this, so they might sense something, might see something, they might feel something. So you say, well, what else is happening in there that would correlate that? So we put instrumentation, we provided people with the ability to log all their anecdotal things, so we can match them up with the actual things that are happening. Is there some increased microwave activity, is increased RF activity, gamma ray activities, all those kind of things we were measuring. And the fact is that at the end of the day, after all the data was collected and looked at, there is actually a lot of activity happening when these people have these experiences. So it's no longer just something that they manifested in their heads. Something actually happened in the environment that would cause that, or something caused that and also did something to the environment simultaneously.
Yeah.
So it's a physical thing that happens. So is it a crack that went over your head, or is it something under the ground that's actually bubbling up and causing people to see very strange orbs or see things in the sky or things like that? So one of the things about the study was that we found that and took a lot of data and we have a lot of good statistics on it, is that most of the time when people have these experiences, there is something going on in the environment that actually looks like it was correlated with it.
Yeah. Does it seem like the human agent is a trigger?
And in what way?
For instance, I'll give a couple scenarios. Well, it's basically a couple questions. Does it seem that anything that you're getting, any data that you're getting from any instrumentation, does it seem to be consistent, or is it only triggered by some sort of a human agent as being the observer?
Yeah, most of the time, like I said, most of the time it's when a human, particular human, is in the environment, that's when you start getting the signals. When you take the human out of it, that's when the signals die down and they attenuate and you don't see a whole lot of them. Of course, these are very, very statistics over thousands and thousands of readings. I mean, we did this for 3 years and we collected many, many terabytes of data. So, and then at the same time, we also collected a lot of anecdotal information from the people. They were asked each day. So we had 35 people in the study. They were asked each day to write down or to type into a website what they felt today. Is there anything happened? They say, well, at 3:00, I felt very, very nervous. I felt anxious. Something was wrong. Or at 4:00, things were great. I had felt euphoric. Things were amazing. Then I would take that and compare it to the readings that I get in their local environment and see how they correlate. And a lot of the times you could pick out to say, okay, well, just before this person reported that they felt great or amazing, that you would have this spike in the microwave range. Or when people would say, well, I had tinnitus or I had an earache and things were not going well today, I felt very anxious. Then you would see a certain pattern in the electromagnetic spectrum that says, oh, wait a minute, and it doesn't happen once, it happened hundreds of times. So that's how we gather the statistics. So you don't do it once, you have all this data. There was an interesting case study. We have maybe 30 case studies that kind of stand out. One of them is when somebody went hiking up into the canyons, into a cave, and chipped out a rock crystal and brought it home with them. From that point on, for a week, they felt terrible. I mean, they felt, very run down and tired. They had earaches. The children were having nightmares. I mean, there was like this thing, and the instrumentation was going fairly crazy.
Yeah.
They went back and returned the rock to where they took it from and came back, and everything went back to normal again. So this is, this only happened once, unfortunately. We couldn't do that a lot, but this was completely not scripted because they didn't know we were monitoring anything. I mean, nobody
Oh,
really
wow.
knows the data or anything like that. We were the only one that knows the data, but they reported, we got a rock, we came back, and I just didn't feel good for a long time, and then we said, this is crazy, so they brought it back, and things got better. So there was a lot of cases like that. That was a more of a that was a pretty significant one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like they're taking, I kind of look at that as a way you're taking something that is resonating within that home frequency, and
That's
you're
right.
removing it, and suddenly it changes the frequency, remotely of that object, and it reverberates.
Yeah.
It starts affecting everything around it.
Yeah. So what you learn is that if you're respectful to the land and you're respectful to the area, that's when then this phenomena is a good thing.
Yeah.
But when you're disrespectful and you try to you try to do things to it, or you try to interact with it in a bad way, then the dogs start barking and things start changing, and things start going bad. So this is, again, after 3 or 4 years of actually collecting data from 35 different people and not only Uinta Basin, we had other people throughout the United States, but most of them were in that area.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely can see that there is this phenomenon, whatever it is interacting with the people, and when they interact with it in a nice way, it's a great thing.
Huh. Now, I would assume that some of the locals or the local, native tribes and stuff
Yep.
like that, Native Americans, would first say it's their ancestral spirits that are guarding the place. It's their land, and they're protecting it, and that's why this phenomenon's happening.
And I would say, in fact, they have in the area, there's a lot of religious ceremonies, Native American ceremonies where they give praise to the ground and they do all these things, and you have to think, why do they do that? I think they do that because at some point they had a respect for the ground, so they understood it, and they said, "Wow, this is really happening here." When we're respect for things are good. So then they turn it. Most people can't have a hard time rationalizing things, so they put a label on it.
Mm-hmm.
They start worshiping it, so it gets into their culture, and it comes along. And after 100 years, they don't really realize that it came from the same phenomena that we're studying.
Yeah.
But they're spending time worshiping it, and it's just these are very interesting things to kind of go back in history and see how they've morphed through the years to end up saying, okay, now I understand what's going on.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is through the years we've captured, we've got all this written history, we've got spoken word history, all the oral history from the locals and the natives, your experiments, all these television shows. We obviously know something is happening.
Yes.
Something is different, something anomalous is happening with the land. And even through some of my studies, I always look at certain things stemmed from the human agent. Like we ourselves can create paranormal activity, based off of, history, what's the person's, what's their mental state and stuff like that. And like you said, there are some visitors that come with not so great, malevolent intentions and start experiencing bad energy.
Yes, that's right.
Now, I've always believed too, working with a lot of Native American energy and peoples and stuff like that, where our energy and wherever, whatever is happening on this land there's a co-creation going on. If it wasn't for us, if it's like that, it's like the theory that if a tree falls in the woods and there's nobody there, does it make a sound?
That's right. That's funny. Yep.
Don't really know. If there wasn't a human agent there, if there wasn't an observer there observing this phenomenon, is it really happening? And that begs the question is, have any studies been done thus far remotely where there isn't a person actually observing. You're having like a computer observing information and continuously gathering it and seeing what's happening without an observer.
So that's funny. So I was involved with Skinwalker Ranch for a little while, and the way it went is that for 12 months or for 10 months out of the year, there's nobody there. There's just a few people, and they just remotely viewed it. But for 2 months of the year, there's a whole bunch of people there, right, doing the show and stuff like that. So it turns out that all of the data, 99.99% of the data, came when the people came there. That's when all the crazy stuff happened. But they had all the same instruments. Everything was the same. All through that 10 months, nothing happened. Not one single thing. Because they weren't there. There was nobody there to interact with. So the study that we did showed, there's no question about it, that it's the people that this phenomena interacts with, not the land itself. Yeah. And there's another, actually, to support that even further, we were fortunate enough to have several people that moved away from an area. And what happened is that the phenomena followed them. We called that the Hitchhiker syndrome. And it actually, we had maybe half a dozen people that were in an area, spent some time there, experienced some things, left the area, and then people that they were interacting with, family members, started to also see these things away that they'd never been there before. So the phenomena followed them. Yeah. So there, again, I don't believe it's bolted down to some area. I mean, this is definitely people-based phenomena.
Huh. Yeah, it's it's neither evil, it's neither good. It's just there's a connection. There's something about the human spirit. There's something about sentient beings that that it's connected to. That it's intelligent. It's an intelligent type of phenomenon or energy or something that wants to connect, wants to communicate, wants to give us some information or work with us, but trying to gather enough data to go, what is it?
Yeah. I think so. I think that humans have a hard time interpreting what is being told to us. We see orbs and we see, lizard-shaped bodies, and we might get this feeling that we've seen somebody before or have all that, but that's our brain interpreting some signals. And that's the whole idea of this study, to say that we know that when these people have these experiences, something is some energy is happening somewhere in their environment that kind of kicked this thing off. So who sent that energy, we don't know. I mean, we kind of have an idea right now, but we don't know. We had several situations where we had people scattered throughout the basin that maybe were 5 miles apart, maybe 3-4 people lined up. And we would look at the instruments at some point. We'd have people say, well, all three of these people experienced something. They were like 20 miles apart. But we look at the instruments and you could see the instrumentation propagating from one to the other. There would be a signal on this one, and then a signal on this one, and then a signal on this one. And each one of these people would have a different reaction. They would say, all of a sudden I just felt like I had to get up and look out the window. It's just something crazy happened. They would write that up. So it is a moving thing, and it's going from people to people. So it's not something that's sitting in an area that's waiting for somebody to walk by. It's something that's out there that might be traveling.
Yeah. Now, what type of events are happening?
It actually spans a lot of things. So there's visual sightings, where they would see something in the sky, or they would see something in the distance. It's something that they would feel. They would feel something. They would feel like, again, anxious or nervous, or they would feel good or feel like they're being watched. Yeah. Then there's physical stuff. So a lot of people would have these strange injuries that people would. I actually had many, many cases that where people say, all of a sudden I just started to get a nosebleed. I mean, who gets a nosebleed? Then you look at the instruments, and all of a sudden we have these big gamma spikes during that period. Wow. And they would go to the doctor and they'd say, well, we have no idea why you have a nosebleed. I mean, everything else looks good. Or their ears would start ringing. We had several cases where people would have all of a sudden they you know what tinnitus, right?
Yeah.
Your ears start ringing. They would have ringing in the ears all of a sudden, and they would go through like several weeks, and the instrumentation that we gave them would indicate that there's something very strange going on. And then when they left the house, they would go away, when they go to work. But when they come home, they would get this strange ringing in their ears, very subtle, not too loud. And then the instrumentation would actually show that there's something there, and then it would die off and they would go away. So it's, so it manifests itself in things that they visibly see. It's things that mess with their phone. Of course, it's always like that, right? Mess with their appliances, mess with their phones, mess with their dogs, and then also physically mess with their immune system, or all sorts of different things in your body that get affected by signals.
Yeah. So what are your plans right now as far as performing? Are there plans to perform other further paranormal experiments, and what type?
Yeah, so it was kind of a 3-phase plan that I established way back when we first started this thing. The first thing I wanted to do was prove that there's a correlation between what people are experiencing and something that's happening in the environment, some physical signals that are there present when people have these feelings. And the argument is that there is a physical thing there, then we can interact with that and figure out where the origin of that is. So the whole idea is to come back now that we have all this data, we can kind of figure out where things are when they happen, right? So we can almost that's actually quite interesting. So we can actually predict within probably 8 hours that somebody will be having an event in a certain period of time, within 8 hours.
Wow.
So we got to the point, we had so much data that we got to the point where we could almost predict when somebody was going to have it within maybe probably 8 hours. And then Sure enough, we would say, that looks like it's going to happen. Then we would wait for the person to come on that day to do their thing. We wouldn't tell anybody. And then sure enough, most of the time, maybe I don't know, maybe 60, I think it was like 64% of the time we got to the point where the person actually reacted that day. It might not have been perfect, but we were able to predict when that person was going to have a reaction. So now if you can predict when it's going to happen, when to set up your instruments. So now the whole idea is that if we can predict it, we can set up some instruments and maybe kind of figure out where it's coming from. And then the third phase is hopefully if you can actually be there when it happens with the right instrumentation, can you communicate with it? So the end game is communication. So the first thing is to establish, is there something physical in the environment that you can interact with? The second one is to find out the origin of it, see where it's coming from. And then the third thing is to go interact with it. So that's the end game.
Yeah.
Of course, people might say, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, right. You're talking to the devil. Wow. Does it seem like there's some sort of a cycle? That there's some sort of almost like a sine wave. Does it seem like there's sort of a timing cycle that this happens?
Yeah. So you've heard of ley lines?
Yeah.
So there's a lot I don't really understand. So everything is nature. Everything is periodic, right? I mean, you can't have anything that sits still. Everything is joggling upside down, up and down.
Yep, continuous motion.
So we get these things where it is a cyclical events that happen. So you'll have like a week will go by and it would be crazy. Like 4 or 5 instruments would go crazy. People would be, hammering out and saying, I had bad, and then it would die out and it would go, it would get very, very small, everything would be fine. And then it would come back again pretty strongly. So, I mean, that's just the nature of the way this, and then it's this flow of energy, right? So this flow of energy might be periodic, that these ley lines where supposedly energy is flowing. So if you could think of it as like this big sine wave going back and forth through the Uinta Basin, this whole area, and then as it flows through certain areas, some people might get affected and then it goes down there. So yeah, I 100% agree that it's definitely cyclical in nature.
Huh.
And that's how nature is, right? Everything vibrates.
Yeah, everything vibrates at a very specific frequency.
Yep, everything
And
has a natural
trying to,
frequency. Yep.
yeah, and trying to hone in on that particular frequency or see what the pattern is.
Yeah.
There's always a pattern in something. I mean,
And
everything is,
yep.
not everything is random. Not
No,
everything.
no. And it could be the people that are more able to interact with this and get these feelings. They maybe their frequencies are more aligned with the frequencies of the energy that's being that's out in the environment. I mean, it could be. We don't. I mean, that's something that's in the next phase, trying to figure out that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I would assume that the locals are just, they kind of just brush it off going, yeah, it's normal. Yeah, they're used to it.
Yeah.
They don't.
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, you're 100% correct. It's like, oh yeah, that's just a
Yeah.
daily occurrence.
Yeah. And if they feel anything, it's just second nature going, oh, yeah, it happens all the time.
Yep. It's amazing what people can get used to.
Yeah. 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 Man. So people can find your research on your Facebook group, which
Yep.
they can search for you. For those who are going to listen, that are going to be listening to this on our podcast platform, would be Dr. Dr. Jim Segala, Segala, MUPA
Us, yep.
research.
Yep. It's a modular unidentified phenomena alert system. That's what that's what the acronym
There you
is.
go.
So these are devices that we put in an area, people carry them with them, or we put them in a house and things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll have all that in the description of all the of any of all the podcasts, or all the outlets and stuff like that. That way they can easily find it. So most of all your research, I mean, it's an extensive, I wouldn't say resume, but bio and stuff. Quantum entanglement, quantum optics, vacuum. I mean, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been fascinated with quantum physics and quantum mechanics and stuff like that, especially with the observer anomaly that happens,
Yep.
where it seems like your outcome changes just because there is an observer in the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And have you noticed anything like that within your studies, where you have all these control groups set up, and it's like, well, I did that experiment just a couple weeks ago. I'm doing the same thing, but now is it because I'm observing something differently that it's changing, or the pattern or the outcome is changing?
Well, that was the reason that we did a lot of the blind experiment stuff. We didn't let the people see their data. We didn't let them see their historical stuff. We just asked them to enter their information.
Yeah.
So what we didn't want to do, we didn't want to influence anything as much as we could. And then, but the thing is that they knew that they have these experiences, so they tend to go and look for them. Most people just walk their daily lives and not really bother with them, but these people are more astute to them. So I would say most of the people that were in the study might have created a lot of these things. They might have said, I'm going to go out and look for this stuff. So where other people might not have had that same level of interaction. Not to say that they did it wrong. They still had these interactions with whatever the phenomena is, but I think that they put themselves into the experiment, and they caused more phenomena than normally would happen to people. So I would say that we had a lot of instances. It was a crazy amount of instances. So, but I think that was kind of like accelerated a little bit based upon their involvement. So yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's kind of like predictive programming. You're already giving yourself some preconceived notions of what to experience. It's like telling somebody to look at a photograph that has an apparition. Now, whether it has an apparition or not,
you can look for it.
You can't really prove that.
Yeah.
But if you tell somebody that, oh, there's an apparition of a tiger or something in there, people are going to see it, whether there's one on that picture or not. It doesn't matter. You're going to see it.
You have to be very, very careful. That's why you have to kind of do things in a certain way.
Yeah, not giving any information out whatsoever. Just say, go collect data, bring it back.
That's it.
Yeah. So, as what's what's the next experiment? What is the next big? I guess what's the next big step in your research?
Well, like I said, so what we're doing now is we're increasing the capabilities of our instrumentation to look for very specific things. So we have a lot of data. We said, most when people have these experiments or experiences, here is the signals that we normally get, which are the biggest values, things that we can easily measure.
Yeah.
So going back and looking at the equipment, and the original equipment was very, very, it kind of had a very big span, so the spectrum it looked at was very, very big. What we do now is we go back and we say, okay, well, I know it happens in this particular frequency range, and a certain amount of things. So we're redesigning, or I'm redesigning our electronics to pick up those particular signals and to look for not just a signal, but where is it coming from? How is it getting here? Can we track it? So we know that it moves around. Can we design things that track things?
Yeah.
So it's morphing out to a new area. So we were very fortunate to be able to put some equipment. There's a ranch in Uinta Basin, Black Rock Ranch. In fact, they have a show on Discovery that they've allowed us to put instrumentation down deep into their holes that they dug. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be putting instrumentation out there. But those are the kind of things that we want to do. We want to find specific areas now where people have a lot of interactions with this phenomena, and do a little bit more to not only tell that it's there, but where is it emanating from? So that's the next step that we're going to do, and looking to do that. So, contacting people that were in the study, but now there's other people that came out of the woodwork that says, that have very good stories. So they have a lot of information that they collected themselves. And now I want to go into those areas with the knowledge that we've gained so far and further find out where it's coming from. If we can, if we can find out where it's coming from, we can start going down the final goal is to see if we can talk to it.
Yeah. Actually communicate with it. Huh. Some of the injury cases that you said that you had studied or investigated from UFO hotspots or cases. Can you touch a little bit about that? Like what type of injuries?
So all neurological, obviously. So a lot of the things are neurological in nature. So I would say that we've got maybe 12 cases where people have that have had some affliction. They would end up in the hospital with some, just something happened to them. They would get, incredible headaches, or they would have some neurological problems, or we had one patient that had a acute onset of Parkinson's, and then it went away. So, or I shouldn't say that. So it had Parkinson's syndrome, and then went away. And then, so all that kind of stuff. So we would get these medical folders. I have a medical background. So I was able to, talk to some of the doctors and get CTs and all that kind of stuff, and look at the various injuries to try to figure out where, what caused these things. So the attendings would get these patients, and they would say, I have no idea what's wrong with you. You're bleeding, or you've got this big lesion on the back of your head, or you've got something going on that we don't know. So they're just going to use anything that the normal things to cure them. So we would look at them and say, okay, wait a minute, what's your histology? What have you done over the past year? What led up to this thing? What does your blood panel look like? At the time. So I would say probably a dozen of these. And I worked with a medical doctor that has a lot of experience doing differentials with people that have these very, very strange injuries. It's like the last person you call when you can't figure out what's going on. This medical doctor, that's what he's done all his career. So I would work with him. I'd be on the physics side, and we would both look at these things and say, this particular injury, although it was stumping for, the attending physicians, really looks like it might have been a radiation thing, or it might have been like an electromagnetic problem or something like that. And then we would analyze it to see whether or not these particular injuries could be classified as something that also, and then usually these people had experiences at the same time. So they would have these episodes where maybe they went into they would be catatonic or something like that, and then they would come out of it and they would end up to have like they would just like their immune system would be shot and they'd have to go to the hospital and they would have like these incredible problems.
Yeah.
And then of course the people that they go to see, they want to just cure it and get rid of them, so they don't really dive in that far, and that's where we get contacted and say, would you kind of come and take a look at this thing? We have no idea what's going on. So we'd say about a dozen that were, a dozen injuries, but probably 3 or 4 that were pretty bad. I mean, like in the hospital, there was one gentleman that it was like almost, bring your family in because you don't look real good. Wow. That type of thing. And we would come in, we weren't there in the initial part of it, but we would read the reports and things like that and say, wow, this guy almost died, but recovered. And then from that point on, he had a continuous banter with whatever the phenomena is.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Unfortunately, most of the medical cases that come up that are of this type don't get really fully researched. They would go to the doctor, they would get cured to some point with some, maybe a widespread antibiotics or whatever, and then they would walk away. And they're never really going back. So if we've seen 12 of these things, I bet you there's hundreds that nobody has really brought forward. They say, that injury was so crazy, I just don't know what happened. Yeah. They got cured, but, there's big question mark on what the heck it was.
And that's crazy because now today it seems like we're a little bit more open-minded about this stuff. Back in the day, I mean, decades ago, you'd be thrown into a rubber room and they'd lock away the key.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very true. But it's amazing the amount of interactions that we have to a big extent. Some people just hear voices. Other people get these incredible headaches and nosebleeds and ear bleeds. Wow. People, so it's we've had people that are some of the very interesting cases. People come back, and it's not always the actual people that went into these areas or that had the interactions. Like I said, the hitchhiker is a very strange phenomenon. And people come back, and then a family member who had been perfectly healthy would get something and start feeling very, feels terrible. As soon as you got back, they felt terrible. And then, it happens. If it happens once, happens twice, that's one thing. But it happens dozens of times. That's when you start asking the question. So why is this happening?
Man. Yeah, that is very, 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 very unusual, and I would say it's probably not only happened. Is this unique? This type of phenomenon, is this unique to the Uintah Basin?
Oh, no. So there's people that are that've been to Sedona and things like that. So again, you have to understand that the context that I'm working in, a lot of the information I get is out of Uintah Basin, but I also have people that are around. So most of the stuff comes to Uintah because there's so many more people there. But again, law of averages say that, if 100 cases are in Uintah Basin and there's all these other phenomena, there's probably a lot of other things going on out there that nobody's recording. Yeah. It's just that, anyway, so it's not unique. I don't think it's unique to the area because I know that there's people out in the West Coast that have the same exact problems. They have different flavor. They would have these trickster things. They would come home from work, nobody was home, and they would find stuff all over the place, or they would have cameras that would record things just moving and things like that. Yeah. So that happens, and then we look at the data from sensing devices, and again we correlate they've had bad experiences. So it's not a unique thing to the basin. It's just that's the place that was available for me to research.
Yeah. Well, we're we're getting close to the end of our show. Do you have any takeaways for our audience that you'd like to share?
I think the most important thing to tell everybody is that you're not, if you feel something that feels a little strange, you're not alone. There's actual something could be in your environment that is causing you to have these premonitions or these visions, or if you see orbs, you see crazy things, it might not be in your head. So that's the thing that was most amazing to me, is that there's a correlation between stuff that's happening in the environment. So when you do that, look up in the air, look around. Is there something going on that you don't see? And that's interesting.
Yeah, do your own research. Start recording stuff. Start
That's
trying
right.
to capture as much data as you can, and see what you get.
Yeah.
And then give you a call.
That's it.
Say, hey, I got a bunch of evidence I need somebody to look at.
That's it.
Try to make sense of this. Yeah. Well, Dr. Segala, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for sharing your experience, your research with us on the show. Thank you very much.
Sure, you bet.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Conscious Radio Network's The Weekly Seance. And until next week, you all have a good one.
See you guys.